Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Western Flavors. In our last episode, Ty faced his harshest test yet when a practice licensing exam delivered catastrophic results: 58% when 75 was required, 17 points below minimum, pharmacology devastatingly weak at 42%. The numbers shattered his confidence, making him question whether reclaiming his veterinary license was even possible. In his darkest moment of defeat, Ty found unexpected wisdom in Jack Bartlett's journal entry about failing his own certification exam twice before passing on the third attempt, about failure being information rather than verdict, about perseverance meaning continuing after failure rather than avoiding failure altogether. And when 10-year-old Lindy found him defeated in the library, she offered simple support, studying together like they always did, having uncomplicated faith that practicing would make him better, believing in her father simply because that's what children do. Together, Jack's written wisdom and Lindy's gentle presence gave Ty the perspective he needed to see one failed exam as information about where to focus intensive effort rather than proof of impossibility. The episode ended with Ty texting Scott about creating a focused study plan, accepting that this journey would take 9 to 12 months instead of 6, but refusing to quit on something that defined him. If you're enjoying this season, please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a chapter. Quick note before we jump in, I've been using NordVPN and NordPass, and they've been game changers for my online security. NordVPN encrypts your connection so no one can track what you're doing online, and NordPass securely manages all your passwords so you don't have to remember dozens of them. If you subscribe through my link in the description, you'll get a huge discount, up to 73% off on a 2-year plan for NordVPN and 53% off on NordPass. Plus, I'll earn a small commission from your purchase, which really helps support Western Flavors. Alright, let's get into it. Today, intensive training begins in earnest as Ty faces the brutal reality of rebuilding skills from the ground up. Amy tests her own healing by taking on her first client horse since Willow, discovering that helping others requires continued vulnerability. Construction reaches a major milestone, making the impossible dream of Heartland's resurrection feel tangibly real. And through it all, family becomes the foundation that supports every struggle, every small victory, every moment of doubt. This is a story about how we don't accomplish hard things alone, about the power of people who believe in us when we can't believe in ourselves, and about why supporting family through their battles might be the most important work we ever do. Monday morning arrived 1 week after Ty's devastating practice exam failure, and he woke before dawn with a mixture of nervousness and determination churning in his stomach. Today marked the beginning of his intensive pharmacology training with Scott. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, drilling drug protocols until they became automatic instead of uncertain. He dressed quietly, trying not to wake Amy, but she stirred anyway.
First day of intensive training?
Yeah, Scott wants me at the clinic by 7. Said we're starting with drug families and working through contraindications systematically.
You can do this. I know you can.
The simple faith in her voice steadied him. After reading Jack's journal entry about failure and perspective, after Lindy's uncomplicated belief that practicing would make him better, Ty had chosen to continue. But continuing meant facing just how much work stood between him and competence.
Ty, I'm proud of you for not quitting, for asking for help. That takes more courage than just pushing through alone.
I don't feel courageous. I feel terrified that I'll put in all this work and still fail.
Then we'll deal with that if it happens, but you're not doing this alone anymore. You have Scott training you, you have Lindy believing in you, and you have me supporting you every single step.
She pulled him into a tight embrace, and Ty felt some of his anxiety ease. He wasn't fighting this battle isolated anymore. His family was fighting it with him. Scott's clinic was already lit when Ty arrived at 7 a.m. Scott met him at the door with coffee and a thick pharmacology textbook that looked intimidating in its comprehensiveness. Morning, ready to work?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Good, because we're not messing around here. Your pharmacology score was 42%. That's not just weak, that's dangerous. A veterinarian who doesn't know drug protocols cold can kill animals through medication errors. So we're drilling until this knowledge is automatic. He led Ty to a small conference room he'd set up as a study space, whiteboards covered in drug classifications, charts showing contraindications, dosage calculators, practice scenarios stacked on the table. We start with basics: drug families, NSAIDs, corticosteroids, antibiotics, anesthetics, sedatives. You're going to learn every major drug in each family, what it does, how it interacts, proper dosage ranges for different species, and weights.
That's a lot of information.
It is. That's why we're doing this intensively. 8 hours a day of focused study is more effective than scattered studying at night when you're exhausted. Your brain needs concentrated immersion. They began with NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, Banamine, Bute, Furocoxib. Scott drilled Ty relentlessly on dosages, contraindications, side effects, made him calculate dosages for horses of different weights, questioned him about drug interactions. By 10 a.m., Ty's head was pounding with information overload, but Scott didn't let up. What's the maximum safe dosage of Banamine for a 1,000-pound horse?
10 milliliters. IV or IM.
And what happens if you exceed that dosage repeatedly?
Risk of GI ulceration and renal toxicity.
Good. What about Bute? Dosage and major contraindication?
1 to 2 grams orally twice daily depending on severity. Major contraindication is combining with other NSAIDs, increases risk of gastric ulceration significantly.
They continued through lunch, Scott ordering sandwiches so they could eat while reviewing corticosteroid protocols. Dexamethasone, prednisolone, methylprednisolone. When to use them, when to avoid them, how they interacted with other medications. By 3 p.m., Ty felt like his brain was melting, but the intensive focus was working. Information that had been scattered and uncertain in his mind was starting to organize into coherent patterns. Meanwhile, across town at Fairfield, Amy was receiving a phone call that would test whether her own healing progress was real or just surface level. Is this Amy Fleming? I was given your number by a friend. I have a horse that, well, she's been through hell. Severe abuse case. We rescued her 6 months ago, got her physically healthy, but psychologically she's still completely shut down. Won't let anyone touch her beyond basic care. I heard you're good with traumatized horses. Amy's first instinct was to say no. She was still healing herself, still processing her own trauma. But then she thought about Willow, about how working with that traumatized mare had actually helped Amy begin her own grief processing, about how vulnerability with the horse had opened doors in herself.
What's the horse's name?
Phoenix. We named her that because we hoped she'd rise from the ashes of her past. But 6 months in, I'm starting to wonder if some damage is just too deep.
No damage is too deep if the horse wants to heal. Can you bring her by this afternoon? I'd like to assess whether I can help.
After hanging up, Amy sat with the decision. Was she ready for this? Ready to take on someone else's traumatized animal when she was still working through her own stuff? Lisa found her in the barn, clearly wrestling with doubt. What's wrong?
I just agreed to assess a severely traumatized rescue horse, and I'm wondering if I'm ready for that, if I'm healed enough myself to help another horse heal.
You helped Willow. That breakthrough was real.
But Willow was different. That was about me processing my own grief through her. This is about actually helping someone else's horse professionally. What if I'm not ready?
Then you'll find out. But Amy, sometimes helping others is part of how we continue our own healing. You don't have to be perfect to be helpful. You just have to be honest. The wisdom settled over Amy like a blanket. She didn't have to be completely healed to help someone else heal. She just had to bring the same vulnerability and honesty that had worked with Willow. Around 2 p.m., a trailer pulled up to Fairfield carrying a bay mare who immediately caught Amy's attention. Phoenix. Even from a distance, Amy could see the tension in every line of the horse's body. Defensive posture, eyes showing not just fear but rage. The owner, a woman named Sarah, led Phoenix carefully from the trailer. She was starved, beaten, kept in a stall barely big enough to turn around in for 3 years. By the time we got her out, she was half dead. Physically, she's recovered beautifully. But mentally, she's still in that hell. Amy approached slowly, watching Phoenix's reactions. The mare's head went high, nostrils flaring, every muscle coiled. But underneath the defensive aggression, Amy saw something familiar. Something she recognized from her own mirror after the fire. Someone who decided walls were safer than vulnerability, that attacking first was better than being hurt again.
I'll work with her, but I need you to understand. This won't be quick. Horses this traumatized need time, patience, and a willingness to meet them where they are instead of forcing them where we want them to be.
Take however long you need. She deserves a chance at trust. After Sarah left, Amy stood outside Phoenix's paddock for a long time, just watching. The mare maintained defensive position in the far corner, radiating stay-away energy. But Amy understood that energy, had felt it herself for months, still felt it sometimes when the grief threatened to overwhelm. She entered the paddock slowly and sat down in the middle. the same approach that had eventually worked with Willow. Not trying to approach, not making demands, just sitting with her own presence, allowing the horse to decide if and when to engage. And then, like she'd done with Willow, Amy started talking aloud.
I know what you're feeling. I know what it's like when everyone wants you to be okay, to trust again, to act like the past didn't happen. But the past did happen, and pretending it didn't doesn't make it go away.
Phoenix's ears flicked toward her, listening even while maintaining distance.
I lost almost everything in a fire. My home, my grandfather's legacy, everything I'd built my identity around. And for months I just worked, kept moving, because stopping meant feeling, kept building walls because walls felt safer than vulnerability.
She sat quietly for a while, letting the words settle.
But here's what I learned. Walls don't actually protect you. They just keep you isolated. And healing doesn't mean forgetting what hurt you. It means learning that not everything will hurt you the same way.
Phoenix didn't approach, but she was watching now, really watching, not with defensive aggression, but with something that looked like recognition. Progress. That evening, Ty arrived home from his first day of intensive training completely exhausted. 8 hours of drilling pharmacology had left his brain feeling like scrambled eggs. But when he walked into Fairfield and saw Amy and Lindy setting the dinner table together, some of the exhaustion eased. Dad, how was your first day? Did you learn lots of medicine stuff?
I learned so much my brain hurts. But it was good. Really good, actually.
Over dinner, he told them about the intensive drilling, how Scott had made him recite drug protocols over and over until they started becoming automatic, about the complex medication scenario Scott had given him at the end of the day.
It was a geriatric horse with arthritis, mild kidney disease, and a history of gastric ulcers. Had to figure out pain management that wouldn't exacerbate the kidney or GI issues, and I got it right. Worked through all the drug interactions and contraindications and came up with a safe protocol.
That's amazing. See, the intensive training is already working.
It is, but it also showed me how much I don't know, how much work is still ahead. The exam is still months away, and I'm starting from further behind than I realized.
But you're not starting alone. You have Scott guiding you. You have this family supporting you. That makes all the difference. After dinner, Amy told them about Phoenix, about the severely traumatized mare she'd agreed to work with, about sitting in the paddock using vulnerability instead of force.
She didn't approach today, but she watched, and that's progress. Tomorrow I'll try again. Same approach, just sitting with honesty about my own wounds instead of pretending to be healed.
Are you sure you're ready for that? Taking on a client this challenging?
I don't know if I'm ready, but I know that helping her is part of how I continue healing myself. We don't heal in isolation. We heal through connection, even if that connection is with a traumatized horse.
The wisdom in those words struck Ty. He'd been trying to rebuild his veterinary skills in isolation for months, hiding his struggle from everyone. And it hadn't worked. Only when he'd accepted help from Scott, only when he'd let Lindy support him, only when he'd let Amy in, that's when actual progress started happening. Can we study tonight, like we usually do?
Yeah, sweetheart. Let's study.
They settled into the library, their usual spots. But tonight felt different. Amy joined them, sitting with her own book while Ty and Lindy worked through flashcards, not offering advice or trying to take over, just being present, supporting through proximity. Lisa brought them tea around 8 p.m., joining them for a while. You know what Jack used to say about hard things? He said we accomplish them through community, not isolation. That the measure of strength wasn't handling everything alone. It was knowing when to accept help and who to accept it from.
I spent so long thinking I had to rebuild my skills completely on my own, that asking for help meant I'd failed somehow.
But you're learning differently now. You're learning that accepting help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Around 9 p.m., Amy suggested they all take a break and visit the construction site. Caleb had texted earlier that day mentioning a major milestone had been reached. They drove to Heartland as the sun set, painting the Alberta sky in brilliant oranges and purples. And when they arrived, Amy gasped at the sight. The barn framework was completely up, a full skeleton of what would become Heartland's new main barn. The roof structure had begun, actual shingles visible on part of the framework. The house foundation had been poured, and walls were starting to rise from the concrete. 50% complete, halfway to finished. Caleb and Ashley were there too, having come to see the milestone. Ashley had been working remotely from Hudson for weeks now, and the relationship between her and Caleb had deepened into something comfortable and real.
Impressive, right? Crew says if weather holds and we don't hit any major issues, we'll be at 70% in another 6 weeks.
It's really happening. Heartland is actually being rebuilt.
They walked through the construction site together. Amy, Ty, Lindy, Lisa, Caleb, and Ashley. 6 people connected by loss and hope and the determination to build something beautiful from ashes. Standing in what would become the new barn's main aisle, surrounded by framework and promise, Ty felt emotion tightening his throat.
Jack and Tim should be here to see this. They should see Heartland rising again.
They are seeing it. Through us. Through what we're building.
She took his hand, squeezing tight.
You're rebuilding your veterinary career. I'm rebuilding my training practice. We're literally rebuilding Heartland's physical structures. It's all connected. All part of honoring what they built, what they believed in.
Jack's perseverance, Tim's determination, Marion's philosophy about patient healing. It's all here in what we're doing.
And Grandpa Jack always said family helps family. That's what we're doing, right? All helping each other? From the mouths of 10-year-olds came the simplest, truest wisdom. Exactly right, Lindy. Family helps family. That's what makes hard things possible. They stood together as darkness fell, looking at Heartland's skeleton illuminated by construction lights, halfway complete, halfway to home, and none of them were doing it alone. That night, back at Fairfield, Ty returned to his pharmacology, studying with renewed focus. The day's intensive drilling with Scott had been exhausting but effective. Information was starting to stick in ways it hadn't before. Amy quizzed him from the textbook while Lindy did her homework nearby. Just presence, just family, just people who believed in him working in proximity.
What's the proper dosage of desamethasone for acute inflammation in a horse?
0.05 to 0.2 milligrams per kilogram, IV or IM, once daily.
And contraindications?
Pregnant mares in late term, horses with active infections. Combination with NSAIDs increases GI ulceration risk.
You got that right. You're getting better at the medicine questions, Dad. The simple encouragement from his daughter, the steady support from his wife, the knowledge that Scott was investing hours into his training, all of it created a foundation that made the impossible feel achievable. Around 11 p.m., after Lindy had gone to bed, Amy and Ty sat together in the library's quiet.
I was thinking about what Lisa said, about Jack believing we accomplish hard things through community, not isolation.
It's true. I tried doing this alone for months. Secret studying, hiding my struggle, thinking I had to prove I could rebuild without help, and I was failing.
Now you have Scott training you intensively, you have Lindy believing in you completely, you have me supporting every step, and look at the difference. You got that complex medication case right today. First try?
Because Scott spent 8 hours drilling the fundamentals. Because you're here quizzing me every night. Because this family refuses to let me fail alone.
He pulled her close, grateful beyond words.
Tomorrow Phoenix might take a step closer to you. Tomorrow I'll drill more pharmacology until it's automatic. The construction crew will add more framework. It's all happening slowly, but it's happening because we're doing it together.
For Jack, for Tim, for Marion, for our family's future.
For all of that, and for each other.
They sat in comfortable silence, 2 people who'd survived impossible losses and were slowly, carefully rebuilding everything that mattered. Not alone, never alone, but surrounded by family who made the unbearable bearable, the impossible achievable, the future worth fighting for. Through the window, the Alberta night stretched vast and star-filled. Somewhere in that darkness, Heartland's framework stood halfway complete. Tomorrow, it would be a little more finished. Tomorrow, Ty would be a little more competent. Tomorrow, Amy would sit with Phoenix again, offering vulnerability that might eventually earn trust. Tomorrow would be one day closer to everything they were working toward. But tonight, they had this each other, family, support, belief that hard things could be accomplished if you had the right people fighting beside you. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. That concludes today's episode of Heartland. Ty began intensive pharmacology training with Scott. 8 hours of brutal drilling that proved exhausting but effective when he successfully solved a complex medication case on his first day. Amy took on her first client horse since Willow, a severely traumatized mare named Phoenix who mirrored Amy's own defensive walls, testing whether Amy's healing was real enough to help someone else. Construction reached 50% completion, making Heartland's resurrection feel tangibly possible as the barn framework rose from the ashes. Caleb and Ashley's relationship deepened through ordinary presence, comfortable and real. And through it all, family became the foundation supporting every struggle. Lisa's wisdom about Jack believing hard things are accomplished through community, not isolation. Lindy's simple faith that her father would succeed if he kept trying. Amy's steady support even while facing her own challenges. The episode ended with the family studying together late into the night, united in their efforts to rebuild careers, heal wounds, and honor the legacy of Jack, Tim, and Marion. Sometimes the hardest battles are fought not through individual strength, but through the collective support of people who refuse to let you fail alone. Family helps family, and that simple truth makes impossible things achievable. Join us next time when Ashley settles into her new apartment and Caleb's deepening feelings force him to confront his biggest fear that he'll repeat the mistakes that destroyed their marriage the first time. When Ty's intensive training reveals just how far he still has to go, testing his resolve. When Amy's work with Phoenix mirrors her own continued healing journey, and when the construction timeline brings both hope and new challenges. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Until next time, this is Western Flavors.